Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Hi, Jim. Yeah, get my jacket. Did you guys log on to the new Zoom link I sent or the original?
You're muted, Mac.
No, I'm not muted. Can you hear me? We have a problem.
I don't hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Josh, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Oh, good, good, good. Did you guys log on to the new link or the original link?
New one.
The new one. Okay, good, good. Yeah, unfortunately, the link that was posted was wrong, so I just reposted it on the website and sent out a mayor's newsletter. Alan, is that you on iPhone? Very handsome shot, Michael. Okay, let's see if we have a quorum. Myself, let's see, we have Claudia. No, we don't have quorum yet. How's everyone doing this evening? Trustee Gluck, good to see you. You can unmute if you'd like to. We are waiting for a quorum. How are you, Michael? Mr. Coleman, how are you?
Doing great, thank you, Mayor.
Good,
Yourself?
Good, good. Congratulations on throwing your hat in the ring. I'm doing fine, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see we have a quorum. I see we have a Trustee Casker and Trustee Gluck. It is 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you're able, please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Let's do the roll call, please, Elizabeth.
Mayor McFadden,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Shaw. Deputy Mayor Shaw,
Absent.
Trustee Gluck,
Present.
Trustee Casker,
Present.
Trustee McHugh,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Shaw.
Okay, we'll move on. All right, so welcome everyone. It's a beautiful day today. I was lucky enough to get outside for a little bit. I hope you did too. I just want to thank the village employees again for doing such a terrific job helping me with this week, closing up the budget, helping me with the booth construction and so on. I also met with the DPW union representatives and discussed their new bargaining agreement. We'll be discussing that later on in executive session. And so I just wanted to say thank you and to the chief for everything you folks do for us. We really appreciate it here in the village, and you really bring so much to the table. It wouldn't be this community without you. So with that said, I'm going to move on to the monthly reports. We have the police department, water department, building department, DPW, treasurer's reports, litigation report, and the minutes. And I'd like to ask if anyone, including the trustees, has a comment on the monthly reports and minutes. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to open the public comment period. 2 minutes, please, for the reports. If you think of something, the old and the new business items. So consider the public comment section open. I see we also have Paul Brook and Josh Scherer. Congratulations also for throwing your hat in the ring. We appreciate it. It's hard to find people to step up, and it means a lot to all of us that you're volunteering, you, Mike, and Paul and Josh. Thank you. All right, so do we have any comments during the comment period? And if you have a question, please state your name and address. Going once. Twice.
This is Jim Hayes.
Hello, Jim. Address,
Yeah,
please.
I have one question, and that is about the work that Orange and Rockland is doing in the park.
Yes.
Can you explain why raising the wires 10 feet is a big advantage to us?
Yes,
Is
the way
it quite likely that we will be charged more now because they've spent all this money on this infrastructure, that they will be able to raise the rates?
I have not heard that from them. What they've told me is that they spent so much money on damages based on falling trees that their investment is going to make it such that they won't have to come in as frequently. So there was no association with the rates. Their claim is that by raising it and by strengthening the wires and also trimming the trees, that they believe there will be less blackouts and brownouts and repairs. Now that was borne out actually in our last few storms. We actually had blackouts and brownouts, but nothing associated with the new wire. So I hope that answers your question. Now, we also have information from them posted on the website, and they have given us various presentations. And if you would like me to send that information over to you, I'd be happy to do so between now and the next meeting.
Okay, that's not necessary.
Okay.
I'm just skeptical.
And there's nothing wrong with healthy skepticism. I certainly
Okay.
understand that. Do any of the other trustees want to comment on Jim's question? Okay, do we have any other questions or comments? Hello, Chu Yen, I see you just joined us. Okay, so we're going to move on then. Okay, so our first item on old business is resolved to approve the CCTV work to be performed on Pond 3 sewer lines as recommended by Weston and Sampson. I know that we have some discussion on that. Who would like to start?
Sure, I'm happy to start
Please
it
do.
off. I think the best thing to do is refer to the May 5th letter 2021 from Weston and Sampson to the village. It's the egregious section is on Tuxedo Lake, not on Weewa. So I think we just need to be careful how we characterize it, because they were talking about 90% flow at 4 a.m. in the morning along Tuxedo Lake. Obviously, that's our drinking water, so that should be our greatest concern. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is with regard to when we approved the scope of work, when they were doing this analysis on October 16th, there was a lot of discussions with regard to this quote unquote overflows being reported on pond number 3. I continue to stand by Jeff and our reporting to the DEC with regard to our monthly discharge monitoring report. We have never reported that. I find it problematic to have it in a public document when it's been investigated by our DPW head who holds the license for the sewer plant. And Joe Zongo had agreed in October to remove that verbiage, and it has reappeared in this document. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is, given the scope of money, $60,000 ballpark, I believe we should be going out for competitive bidding. with regard to this. And I guess an ancillary and secondary question is, where do we stand with regard to the postmortem and analysis of what Arrold Engineering did and with our speedy permit and compliance there?
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Well, sort of taking the last one or two points first, I think. I was also scratching my head over why we wouldn't, in a project of this size, understanding that Weston and Sampson has some familiarity with our, with our lakes and our overall I&I issues. Nonetheless, what we're talking about here is doing CCTV on kind of two very discrete areas. And I'm not so sure that familiarity, carries the day. So I'm kind of inclined to also ask the question why we wouldn't put this out to bid. It is, it is $60,000. It's not an insignificant amount of money. And, engineering firms are not always likely to do not always give you their best price right off the bat. Secondly, I think part of what Alan was asking, and I ask it a slightly different way, I think when we were last talking about this some meetings back, we were saying, well, let's take a look and see what the results of our flow metering were from the from the I&I work that we're doing. And I don't know that we've gotten those results back yet. In other words, I'm not sure whether we are in a position to do, everything. And if those results show, a need to do, X and Y, and this is Z, we need to kind of look at it, I think, holistically and figure out how we're going to approach all of that.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Casker.
So I think I'm rereading the report right now, and the issue with Tuxedo Lake, for those who haven't had the benefit of reading this, actually I'm not going to go through it, but they couldn't even get an accurate flow measure at 4 in the morning because there was so much infiltration in the system, and I think that should be the focus of the CCT efforts. I hadn't even thought about competitive bid and until Alan brought it up, but it is a pretty sizable expense, and I don't see a necessity to rush and not, I think it's worthwhile to delay to get somebody else to look at it, and then we know that, hey, Weston Sampson is a team to go with, and we can feel better about spending $60-some thousand. Are
you saying competitive bid for their subs or for the engineering firm?
No, well, they're proposing that they want us to spend $60-some thousand to CCTV the sewer lines.
They're subs.
Yeah, whoever's going to do the work. Whoever's going to charge us $62,000, we should ask somebody else how much they would charge us.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Trustee Shaw? You're on mute. There you go.
I mean, that shouldn't take a long time for them to get 3 different quotes from subs, if that's the case. Shouldn't delay it. I mean, we don't have to go out and do anything more than that, right? Than to ask Weston and Sampson to give us that.
That's a good question. I mean, if we do a normal bid package, we would have to write the RFP and then set the bid date, the opening date, get it approved for bid once we wrote it. That could be months.
Right.
I guess my only question to the trustees who've come up with this idea of bidding, this was never mentioned. You've had this material for months and months and months, knew this was coming. It's just quite a surprise to bring it up at the last minute. Of course, I have nothing against bidding. It just seems to be one more delay now that's tagged on to this wanting to do this project, which we've been wanting to do for a couple of years. I'm not going to read into it, but if you now decide that you want to go out to bid, I'll just take that, and I'll just take you at your word, and I'm happy to accommodate the trustees and go out to bid. I do think it is very important to get this project going. We had limits with the Department of, with the DEC in terms of time frame and limits. If we were to go out on a bid with this, we could have gone out at least 2 months ago easily. We all had the same information then.
Hold on.
So with that, I'm going to table it and
Hold on. Look,
wait, please. Would you like to speak? Trustee
Trustee
Casper,
Shaw,
would
go
you like
ahead.
to speak?
I'll defer to trustee Shaw right now.
Yeah, so I think it might be worthwhile to bring John into the conversation. He might have a little more information on this. Since
Well,
he-
certainly we could have invited the engineer.
Well, that's for sure, yeah. Yeah, anyway, I mean, this has been in the works for years and I would just see if they could just give us alternate, like within subcontractors, instead of going out to RFP or whatever it is called, and just have Weston and Sampson. I mean, they work with several subs, so
Mhm.
this is probably the cheapest
Mhm.
that they have.
Mhm.
I don't think that Joe Zongel works that way. I think he does his research and he comes up to us with the cheapest alternative. So
Right. John, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Can you reach out to Joe and see if he's available?
This evening or tomorrow?
Yeah, this evening.
Okay, let me try.
And also, do you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
I guess the only thing I'd like to add is it's very, very difficult to locate areas where we have inflow and infiltration. We found areas that have inflow and infiltration. We should really try to resolve it without too many additional studies. Because once again, it's hard enough to find these areas, and once you find them, we should try to resolve them, expeditiously. I do understand the budget constraints as much as anybody else, but we've identified problems. We should try to resolve it without having too many more reports and studies done.
Okay.
So I don't think-
Trustee McHugh, you had your finger up?
Yeah, John, whilst we've got you on, can you give us an update of where we stand with regard to Weston and Sampson doing a postmortem on phase 2 and 3 of the I&I project?
I'm not familiar with that at this point.
Sorry, so I guess my fundamental issue here is we've gotten a large capital project. It's $150,000. We have to report to the DEC with regard to what we've achieved with regard to that project. And from there, there's going to be additional steps that we either don't have to do anymore with regard to satisfying our Speedy's permit or not. That should be of paramount importance rather than this. This is important, and it's really important with regard to Tuxedo Lake in light of what Chris brought to light at the meeting. And we certainly should move forward, but that doesn't mean we're fiduciaries and we have to go out to competitive bid and make sure we're getting the best and the most reasonable service and bang for our buck. So I think we've got two things going on here. One thing which I'm troubled about is that we haven't followed up and we don't know where we stand with regard to what Arrold Engineering did and the success of the project.
When you say we, who do you mean?
That is, Weston and Sampson was tasked with that. And I'm not casting aspersions on John. I was just asking if John knew, because John's the point person with Weston and Sampson. And it sounds like we have no update, which in itself is troubling since, John, when was the substantial completion date with
I think-
Arrold? Sorry?
I don't have those dates in front of me.
Yeah, I think we need to get Joe. I think we need to get Joe involved. I've sent out a lot of information that Joe's submitted to us. I want to make sure that you have all that in front of you. And we don't have time to do that now. So if we can get Joe on the phone. Otherwise, I think my marching orders are pretty clear. I will contact Joe tomorrow and have him go out to bid with the subs. And of course, follow up and see if he's gotten the information from the I&I. Okay, let's move on to the next item
So,
unless there's
hold
something
on.
else someone wants to add.
Yeah, I'd like
Yes,
to
Trustee Casper.
clarify my point, because it changed as soon as, Trustee McHugh brought up that point about putting it out to bid. If we're going to buy a police car, we don't take the dealership that we go to the most and just grab their price and go with it. We're spending $50-some thousand in a police car, we get additional bids. I look at this as analogous to that. We're spending, Weston Sampson's recommending that they sub out the work for $62,000 to CCTV some pipes. I don't think we go to Weston Sampson and ask them for a better price. We go to another engineering firm
Exactly.
and ask them how much they would charge to do the scope of work that Weston Sampson already wrote for us that we already paid them for.
Now, did anyone hear me say that we're not going to go out to bid?
I thought I heard ask Weston Sampson for better subcontract prices.
That the question was, do we ask for a new engineer or a new set of subs? And Tinka felt that we should go with a new set of subs through Weston and Sampson, which is what we've done in the past. And now you're saying you'd like to go to a different engineering firm.
Look, I'll defer to other people on the board who have been doing this longer than I have, but I think you ask another prime contractor for a better price. You don't ask subs through a prime for a better price.
No, the prime would ask for new subs to compete against the subs already on the estimate.
Well, can I, Mayor?
Yes, please.
May I make- So maybe we're all right in this. In the sense that I think we can assume, but we should certainly ask Weston and Sampson whether they've gotten the best price. They're very comfortable with that, or they can get a better price from their subs. But we in the past have often gone to our alternative, engineering firm at least, and said, here's what we're doing. What could you do this for? And it doesn't strike me that the description of the task here is all that complicated. It's we know where the pipes are, or Weston and Sampson.
Trustee Gluck, I agree. Of course, there's going to be, for a new engineer, there's going to be a startup cost because they're going to have to get familiar with the project. That's going to be built into the bid. That's going to cost us consulting money. If you want to do it, that's fine. Again, I don't care if we do a bid. Of course, it's great to do a bid, but information's been sitting on our desks for months. My only point was that we should have discussed this from the beginning. This is very
got this May
11th hour,
5th.
talking about going out to bid.
May 5th, I got this.
5th.
May 5th, 2021. It's not months.
Trustee Casker, it was preceded by another letter in the year 2020.
October 16, I think.
Yes.
October 16, 2020. Same information, same prices.
Yep.
We didn't have the flow tests then. This is what is a result of the flow tests that they've done
But
in
the
April.
prices are the same. And there was no mention of going out to
Right,
bid.
and now we understand the importance of doing it. But now we're going to ask people to bid on something we didn't know we were going to do yet. Now we know, and now we bid.
Okay, great. So let's move on.
Mayor McFadden, I was able to get in touch with Joe Zongel. He's gonna log on in up to 2 minutes.
Okay, terrific. So we'll move on, and when he's in, we'll have him, the trustees can address questions to him. All right, so let's go to the next item on the agenda, which is the GIS and mapping and engineering fees. I think we should move on to table that until we get Joe on the phone and move on to Hogland. Does anybody have any comments about agreeing to the Hogland licensing agreement?
Oh, works for me.
I have no issues with it.
Trustee McHugh and Trustee Gluck.
No, template of the previous one, so I have no problem with it.
Okay, good. All right, so I'll read off that one. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approve that the mayor sign the Hogland license agreement for the use of certain areas of the DPW property for truck parking, water, electricity, and other reasons specified in sections 2.1, 2.2, and 4.0 of the agreement. For this access, Hogland Energy Group LLC will pay the Village of Tuxedo Park a fee of approximately $6,000 to be added as revenue in the budget line item 2410, property rental. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Terrific. Thank you. Okay, and let's see.
Mayor,
Yes,
I just wanted to say, somebody has their hand up. Do you want to address that now or wait?
I'd like to hear from Joe if he's on the line.
Not yet. I don't see him. I'll let you know. when I
Okay,
do.
and who has their hand up?
Shunyun Hempel?
I can wait. I'm sorry. I got back late from the city. I missed the public comment session right at the beginning. I can wait. You've got important business in front of you.
Okay, thank you. Now, while we're waiting for Joe, you're welcome to ask the question without objection from the rest of the board. Okay, please.
Okay, it's not a question, it's an announcement. The Friends of the Racetrack Preserve and the Garden Club will be hosting a spring celebration on June 5th for the entire community. It will involve a walking tour at the racetrack starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, followed by tree planting ceremony at the northern end in honor of Debbie Matthews, Coco of the DPW, who also retired last year, Alan McHugh, who's been our dedicated tree board liaison for the past years, and also in honor of all the stewards whose donation made the racetrack possible. And then the event will then adjourn to Gavin Maxwell's house on Summit Road. And the Maxwells have very kindly allowed the visitors to cut the peonies from their gardens for a donation. And there'll be drinks and the food will be individually packed. And current CDC guidelines about masks and everything else applies. So I hope everybody can join us. This will be the first celebration and community event since COVID started in 2020. And I hope to see all of you there. And also, I don't know whether Elizabeth, you had the chance to circulate the photograph of the new board, that the notice board at the racetrack to all the trustees.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I'm here to seek permission for us to mount that piece of wood on the existing pole, which currently houses two really ugly signs. This board, which looks like a little, it's just a bigger piece of board, will allow us to put, there you are. Will allow us to put the notices up with a lot more grace and protection. So I'd like the trustees' permission for us to do that. And the positioning of this particular notice board is on existing, is right where the pole is at the moment. So at Tuxedo Road is right where the steel barrier is at the moment. And we also want to put one at the northern entrance, which will be into the path further beyond where the Stewart Stone, the stone where we dedicate the Meadow Stewarts is located. So I'd like, you to sort of ask me questions, if any comments.
Okay, thank you very much. I didn't get a chance to look at it, so I'll defer to the other trustees on this.
Can I just pop in for a second just to say that Christopher Gao is paying for this himself. There's no cost to the village.
Thank you. Do any of the trustees have a handle on this issue?
I mean, I'll give you my 2 cents is, given what's been there for the last 6 years, which looks appalling and cheap and flimsy, this is a vast improvement, looks more akin or aligned to what you see in state parks and everything. So I personally see it as a huge improvement, and thank Christopher and the TAB for mobilizing this and doing this. So I'm in favor, sorry.
Just as long as we're all aware it is not a public park. Paul, any comment?
No, I saw it. I think the board is a definite improvement. The only question I had, I think, was, did I read that you were going to continue with the 2 postings that are there currently? And is that board large enough to handle the messaging that you are looking to put there?
Good question, Paul. We're replacing the 2 existing notices with a combined one, which is much more friendly, much more graceful and short.
Great.
And it will warn people, it basically says, I can read the draft text to you. It says, welcome to Racetrack Nature Preserve. To protect the native plants, birds and wildlife and yourself from ticks and possible injury, please stay on the path. Please don't litter, smoke, remove any plants, nests or eggs, or feed the wildlife. But please do keep your dogs on leash and pick up after them. Thank you. Enjoy the gifts of nature. TV Tree Board.
Okay, I think we've discussed this enough.
Hold on.
Alan or Paul, would you like to, is this important? Chris, what do you got?
Yeah, just quick question. So how far into the preserve is this going to be? Is it right where the old sign is, or is it going to be moved?
Exactly where the old sign did. In fact, the post stays. We're just putting a bigger piece of wood at the top.
So I'm sure it'll be fine, but my only observation is driving by there are a lot of signs. There's a historic marker, there's a do not enter sign, there's a stop sign, there's one-way sign, there's lots of poles and signs, and this is a larger sign, a larger marker. It's going to be more visible. And I would just ask that we put some thought into how cluttered that area is with posts and apparent, and not this sign. This is a very beautiful looking one, but a lot of the other ones are, I don't think, reflect the historic nature of Tuxedo Park. And, they're Department of the Transportation type signs, but I just think that there's some better alternatives we can do. And this just kind of adds to more things to look at. I just want to make that observation.
I think, Trustee Casker, didn't we agree that we were going to do a wood signpost for the nature preserve sign itself?
You mean the historic marker?
Yeah.
The historic
Didn't we
marker,
ask for a wood post?
we asked for something other than stainless steel. And I don't think, we knew exactly where that sign was going to be placed when we approved it. We knew the general area. I'm not super pleased with where it is, but I actually think it's dangerous. Somebody goes off the road on a wet driveway.
Yeah, I had
It's
brought up
hard to
to
windshield.
Christopher and Chuyin that some people had asked for it to be moved a long, long time ago. But
Well,
of course, other people like it. They mentioned other people like it. But Chuyin, would you consider changing that to a wooden pole?
Well,
Rather than a
New
metal
York-
pole?
New York historical sign is a metal sign. There is
Mm.
no wood alternative. So unless we say that this is not a historical site, we can't,
I'm referring just to the pole.
the pole.
Yeah, I think it's on a metal pole rather than a wood
Yeah,
pole.
I don't know the construction of this whole thing because it's ordered from the shop that does all the New York historical site stuff.
Right.
So whether it is possible to mount the historic sign, which is made of steel, onto a wooden pole, I don't know at this point. And I hear what Trustee Chris was saying, but it's funny because like everything else in Tuxedo Park, we also hear, as the mayor said, a lot of compliments to that about that sign, saying that it's about time, we should be really proud of this and so on. But I do accept what you say about we need to be careful about over proliferation of signage in that area. We can't do anything about the stop sign because that's a police sign. The sign, the new sign that we're seeking your approval is right exactly in the current location. So, and you can't see it because there's a dip going down to the racetrack. At the moment, as Elizabeth, I can actually show you the photograph. Instead of two very ugly, I don't know whether you can see this.
Yep.
Two very ugly, sort of boards. We're replacing it with this thing at the bottom, and it is painted dark green. So it'll be a lot more, as I call it, stylish, quiet, and in keeping with the serenity of the racetrack.
So I've got a question, and this is to Chris Casker. It's twofold. One is the historical marker. The issue you have is the aesthetics or where it's currently placed. That's question number one. Question number two is with regard to the signage Chuyin's suggesting. Given it's wood, it could probably be screwed to one of the trees down there, which would reduce the amount of posts sticking up there. But it is well down inside the racetrack around the loop. So, I mean, there's a solution to that, but I was just wondering what what the issue was with regard to the historical marker, if it was the placement or the aesthetics of the marker.
I actually think, honestly, I would say I'm not a fan of both.
Okay.
Aesthetics, it looks like a rusty old pole, which is, historic, and better than typical stainless steel, which is what it would have been mounted on. But it's also right on the road in the middle of a curve. And I'm really surprised nobody took it out in this snowstorm. But my other fear is that if a car does run off the road there, taking the curve too fast, that it would go right through the windshield and maim or kill somebody. That with, like I mentioned before, where all those other signs are, just a lot going on at that intersection. And I don't think it's very beautiful. And, we spend a lot of time and effort when people want to build a home, making sure that we all agree it's going to be beautiful and reflective of Tuxedo Park's historic nature and architecture. And it just appears to me that area has, as beautiful it is beyond the entrance, with all the great work that all the volunteers did with the racetrack, that area is not the best. And I don't know if the chief would be willing to take a look at, exactly where the do not enter and stop signs are, and if they are indeed in accordance with the Department of Transportation rules and regulations. I know for a fact that some of our double yellow lines are not, so I wouldn't be surprised if some of those signs are not as well. And that may be, if we could back them up a little bit and still be within regulations, that may be something that would help clear up that area. But again, it is one of the first things you see as you come around that curve. It's generally very close to the main entrance of Tuxedo Park, and I honestly think it could just be cleaned up a little bit.
Also, a couple of weeks ago, I did receive an inquiry from a resident about the sign and the long-term maintenance of the front gate in relation to is the park, does that sign mean it's open for people to come and look in at the park? So I have asked the attorney about that, and I'll let everyone know when I find out. I have no idea.
And I'm not saying don't put the new sign up for the racetrack. I'm all for it. I would just ask that as the TAB and the Friends of Racetrack, as they look at more work, and again, if the chief could just look into it as well with the traffic signs, if there's just a little more we can do to make that look a little bit nicer.
So
Okay, that aside, have we had enough discussion so that we can vote on the original request?
I think so.
Okay.
Well,
Alan, yes, Trustee Gluck.
Maybe not. I mean, I'm just thinking through, what I recall of the sign placement. And I think the sign, talking about the new sign, not the historical marker sign. I think the new sign is beautiful and appropriate, but I'm walking away from this conversation with just a question about whether is it worth taking a look to see whether it should be moved back a little bit further. And, if we have to put a different pole in, the village could put the pole in perhaps. We're not necessarily wedded to that exact location. So maybe we could approve it with subject to some further consideration of its actual placement.
Right. Just so we're clear, does everybody know exactly where this sign is and what's right in front of it, which is 2 steel rods with a U-tube going through with a padlock, which the DPW has to stop access down there? I mean, yeah, that's a real eyesore in the whole scheme of things. I have no problem, I know Christopher Gao, when he put the historical marker, had met with the chief and with the DPW superintendent with regard to placement. Maybe, this discussion seems to be that, rightly so, there's too much sign pollution. That's the last thing we want to do in the park is litter. So maybe the discussion should be, we should go back, revisit that, and come up with a better plan with regard to placement of the other sign too.
I think what we should do to move forward tonight is to vote on the sign request this evening. And then between the meetings, we can get together with Chu Yin or Chris Gao, trustee or two, and discuss those things and maybe get some sort of agreement for the next meeting. Does that sound reasonable?
Works for me.
Okay, so Alan, do you want to do the resolution? I don't have it. Did you include a resolution with that, guys, or do we are we going to just start from scratch on that?
I think
have
we have to
verbiage?
start from scratch. I know Chu Yan or Christopher had sent it to Elizabeth, but I hadn't seen anything subsequent to that.
Okay, so there's no resolution. Do you guys want to make a resolution? Do you have any material in front of you that you could reference? Yes, Chuyan.
May I make a suggestion? The sign that we're seeking approval tonight, we will move it further into the racetrack because we would like to put it up in time for the June spring celebration. And then we can deliberate further about the historical marker, you know.
Yeah, what do you want us to call the sign in the resolution? The sign stand?
Notice board.
Pardon? Notice board?
Yeah.
Okay, the new notice board. Okay, you want to run with that, Alan or Paul?
Sure, I'll take a crack at it.
Thank you.
Resolve that the Board of Trustees approves the notice board to two notice boards as provided to the Board of Trustees by prior email, be authorized to be placed in two locations in the Tuxedo Park Nature Preserve.
Chuyan, you wanted to, look, I'll second. Chuyan, did you want to add something?
No.
Okay, Alan?
Just point of clarification, Chu Yan, is it two notice boards or one notice board?
Two notice board, one on Tuxedo at the Tuxedo Road entrance, which we're going to put further beyond the steel barrier. And the other one is at the northern entrance, which we will put into the trail beyond the the Meadow Stewart Stone, which is way into there. Nobody can possibly see it driving by.
Any
unless they
further
want to go
discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any nays? Pass. Thank you, Chuyan.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Now,
you.
so are you available to, you and or Chris, to meet with, say, Chris Casker or Paul or Alan or someone to discuss the other signage in the area?
Sure.
Okay. And trustees Casker, Gluck, or McHugh, is that something you'd be willing to do?
I'm happy to do it.
Great.
Maybe I'll bring my chainsaw and do some work down there too.
We look forward to it. Do we have Joe on the line yet?
Yes, we do, Mayor. Joe is logged
Okay.
on.
Hi, Joe. Before I throw you into the fire here, let me explain why I reached out. And first of all, thank you very much for taking time out of your evening to be with us. On the agenda this evening, we have two items related to Weston and Sampson. One is the CCTV work, originally outlined in the October 20th, October 6th, 2020 letter, and then the May 5th letter that you recently sent. And there are several questions about competitive bidding as well as results. And so I'm going to turn it over to the trustees to follow up. I think Trustee McHugh, you'd probably like to start off.
Sure, I'll start off. I'm going to start off in a different place, Joe. Where do we stand with the postmortem with regard to the success of the Arrold engineering or the Arrold construction and realigning of the sewer lines?
Sure, they've achieved substantial completion for the work.
That was done in December?
That was done, I believe the official notice came out in February because they had to do some lateral sealing. For all intents and purposes, the work was substantially completed. You can consider in November where the bulk of the lining and the manhole rehab was completed. From a technical standpoint, I couldn't issue that until February. So with that said, they're substantially complete with a remaining balance on the contract. To the original, can you restate your original question? I'm sorry.
My question is, we had Harold come in, we did this scope of work. We got some grant funds with regard to this. We have to do a postmortem of this, report to the DEC to see whether we need to do additional work with regard to compliance with the DEC. And my understanding was that's what you guys were endeavoring to do this spring when we had the thaw, so you could look at what our flows are going through the sewer plant and see if there had been any success in what we'd addressed with Arrold.
Sure. Yeah, so the flow isolation was conducted during the month of April, about mid-April. I believe it was from the 9th to the 13th. Don't quote me on those dates, but that's around the time period. So the sub-basins 2 and 10 area for regard to the SSES and the aerial construction was conducted. We've recently received the results from the flow isolation sub-consultant and are in the process of preparing the necessary letter to go to the DEC. Overall, they had very good results. The flow was negligible, that was read. There was one location where we found that a roadside swale was actually draining into a manhole. We're going to look into getting that repaired, but it's a fairly simple repair. Otherwise, the results were very promising, and it appears that Aerial's work was successful. As part of Aerial's contract, they are still contractually obligated to go back and inspect the manholes after a year after substantial completion, and CCTV the lines to make sure the liner is still intact. So that's a 1-year period, and the village is withholding 15% retainage on those items until they come back to completed. So, but overall, it was successful, and we'll be providing the summary information shortly to the village and to the DEC.
Okay, and then what's your, if you're looking at a schedule, what do you envision with regard to feedback from the DEC and whether there's going to be further steps given we continue to violate our speedy permit?
Sure. Well, when it gets submitted, I can't estimate their turnaround time. Depending on what their backlog is, it might be a month or two until we hear back. But then there are additional phases within the implementation plan, the flow management plan that was submitted back in 2019, if I recall, which includes doing a flow analysis of the entire system, receiving plant flows, and then putting together a comprehensive report. So what will end up happening is the DEC will say, thank you for submitting these results. We agree with your analysis or we disagree, and then we'll get that finalized. In all likelihood, they'll agree with our results. Then they'll say, move forward with the next phase of the flow management plan that was approved.
And just, so we're talking Q3 best case scenario, you're going to get some result. And then what are you, the next stage, have you even remotely quantified what you think it'll be?
In terms of what?
Additional flow.
What'll be required next is to be looking at the system holistically, and it's more of a data analysis type of activity, which we allocated a budget item when I was discussing the budget for the next year with the mayor and Tinka Shaw.
And what was the dollar amount?
I'll have to pull it up. Give me a moment here.
So, Alan, I think you were talking about having this type of information in front of you before we move forward with any CCTV decision. Is that correct?
No, with regard to the CCTV, I just honestly think we have to go to competitive bid. I just think it's prudent as fiduciaries. So that's my obstacles, and it's got nothing to do with Joe, and Joe understands that on all the other projects we've dealt with him, over X dollar amount, we have to do it. So
yeah. Joe, what is the, thank you, Alan. What is the, what did you estimate that, Joe, or is that based on subs that you brought in? How did you get that 60 grand for the
Sure.
CCTV upon 3?
Yeah, so those numbers are primarily sub-consultant costs. So what we held was the cost for one of our inspectors to be out there to provide assistance to the CCTV inspector. But the bulk of the costs are from the CCTV sub-consultant. We held contingencies, and that was based on a day rate production. Because of some of the unique features of the sewer, we weren't able to do it on a linear foot basis, so we had to do it on a daily production rate. Some of those unique features are some of the manholes aren't able to be located. Some of them have steel surcharge plates that are bolted onto them, which are difficult to remove. So there are some issues in the field that they might run into. So we did a conservative estimate based on field production, and the contract set up to be based on a time and expense basis. So the estimate was based on.
Did you solicit other CCTV vendors?
I solicited the vendor that is most familiar with the village, and then the numbers that they gave us are competitive to what we see in the industry. I could solicit other vendors to see if I can get a better price. But we do a significant amount of this work, and based on the rates they provided, they were in line with industry standards. So we use them because they're familiar with the area. We have a good working relationship, and we trust the product they provide.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that our procurement policy requires that we go out to competitive bid, Paul, on this, as it may fall under professional services rather than getting some quotes, but you know, that we can check with Brian. But it sounds to me, what I've just heard is there may be other CCTV companies that may give a lower price, but unless it's substantially lower, we would probably choose the one that has the most familiarity with the park. In other words, I don't want to go off on an exercise just to go off on an exercise, spend a lot of money to find out that we're going to get back to the same place. You know, here, in my view, I'm listening to an expert tell me that the price that they got for this CCTV work, there's two things going for this vendor. Number one, they're most familiar with Tuxedo Park. And number two, their bid was in line with what they see in the industry. And I'm going to listen to my expert. Now, Joe, there was also the mention of going to a brand new engineer for a bid on this. My view on that is that there would be a whole lot of upfront costs just to get somebody familiar with it. And it too would not bear the kind of fruit that potentially has been discussed tonight. What is your view on that?
Sure. Well, I understand the board's, desire to try to get the best price possible. To go back to your original comment, the CCTV subconsultant working under our contract would fall under professional services, which doesn't require competitive bidding as compared to public contracts, which you have to go with the low bidder.
Right.
I'd like to remind the board that the CCTV is the next phase of our contract that we had. So
Yeah, I'm listening to it on television. I mean, on my phone. I can't.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Jim, if you don't mind going on mute.
He's muted.
Okay. So this is the next step this is the next phase of the contract that was previously approved. So we've done the initial field reconnaissance to locate the structures. We've conducted the flow isolation, and then the CCTV was to follow after that. And then everything was going to be compiled into a report, which has been previously approved by the board. So This is just part of the package.
Right. So a new engineer would have to redo all of that work and then go out and find a CCTV contractor.
Correct.
But as you said, this has already been approved. This was part of the approved process that we started with from the beginning. So I'm going to turn the floor over to trustees Casker and Gluck, who also had an interest in going out to bid.
So, Joe, thanks for, last minute joining the call. I appreciate it. So the total cost here is, if we did all the CCTV that you guys recommend, would be $62,000. Now, is that a fixed cost, or since it's time-based, time and expense, if it takes longer time, it's going to cost us more. If it takes less time, is it going to cost us less?
That's correct. So the way I have it set up is mobilization is listed as task 4A. If you have the letter, which I copied the cost table from our original proposal, so I haven't changed the costs even through the new year. The mobilization cost is a lump sum for the contractor to get his equipment together to go out to the site. So that happens regardless if they TV 2 feet or 2,000 feet. The rest of them are set up on a time and expense basis. We're only recommending that the Pond 3 area and the Tuxedo Lake areas be inspected. And since it's based on time and expense, what would happen is our inspector would be out there with the crew guiding them. They would be only billing on an hourly basis based on time used, as well as the TV would be on a daily basis. So if they are able to get advanced production more than we anticipated, and we try to be conservative, I'd hate to go back for more. I'd rather come back and say that it's less. You'll only be billed for what is incurred. We've also held an allowance of $10,000 in case there's additional heavy, what's called heavy pipe cleaning, which is more than typical 2 passes of a jetter, and root cutting. So if that's not needed, then that won't be spent, and that money will also not be billed towards the contract. So the $60,000 that you quote is our conservative estimate, but only what is used will be billed. It looks like for the flow isolation, we actually finished ahead of schedule as well. I'm waiting for the sub-consultant to send their final bills. But based on their production and the things that we saw in the field and some of our efficiencies, task 3 appears to be slightly under budget as well, and the village will be only billed based on what was incurred per the contract terms.
You said we have a savings of 15,000, right?
No,
In
The
the
total-
Arnold agreement, they came in
no,
under.
that's a holdback.
Yeah, the Arnold
15%.
agreement is a separate, is a
Right, right. You're saying, Alan, you're saying that's a holdback on payment?
Yeah, Joe said he was holding back sums with regard to Harold, so.
There's a
that- that-
15% retainage that's withheld from Harold's contract.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification.
Mhm.
Trustee Castor, any further questions?
Yes, yeah. 2 more. So in reading your report, the Tuxedo Lake section seems pretty horrible. There's probably a more technical term. But the pond, I'm sorry, I think it was the second worst one. Weewa?
On 3,
Pond 3 was the second worst?
Pond 3.
Okay.
on
Now-
3 was second.
And can you just refresh my recollection on what made that worse? Because one thing that I thought I took away from when I read the letter was the notice of the manhole cover overflowing, which I saw a video. I don't know when it was taking. Trustee McHugh has an issue with that being mentioned in the letter because it's never been confirmed by a DPW official. But is that one of the reasons why pond number 3 is the second priority, or is it really what you saw in the flow?
It's both. So originally pond 3 was identified because it's constructed with the clay tile pipe, which have ungasketed, non-gasketed joints every 2 feet, and its
Right.
proximity to the lake, or I'm sorry, to the pond. There have been to your point about the reported overflows. I specifically use the word reported because they were reported by residents to the village, and then they were subsequently investigated by the DPW, and I assume that they took all the necessary steps to move forward. So I'm not saying confirmed or quantified, but that's.
Thank you for that clarification. That was
Yep.
a concern of one of the trustees.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's just emails that have been received, from residents.
Okay.
I provided some
Joe-
additional, yes.
Can I just ask, since we're on this topic, do you monitor and receive the discharge monitoring report on a monthly basis from the DPW or what we submit to the DEC?
We do not.
Thank you.
Trustee Gluck reached out to me later this afternoon for some additional support as to why pond 3 was targeted or was identified. So the numbers that we ran, we quantify them in a gallon per day per inch mile quantity. And what that does is that brings everything down to a unit value so that things can be compared apples to apples. So it's on a basis of miles of pipe, inch diameter of the pipe. So whether you have a 6-inch diameter pipe, 8-inch diameter pipe, and then gallons per day. We were able to isolate 3 distinct sections within the pond 3 section. The most upstream portion of the clay tile pipe, they were able to plug, but it didn't fully hold. So there was some flow bypassing it. So those numbers, as I point out in the letter, were skewed. But that section came out to a reading of approximately 40,000 gallons per day per inch mile. The next 2 sections downstream of that, which are in the same general vicinity, same construction, same vintage, came out to have readings of approximately 20,000 gallons per day per inch mile and 19,000 gallons per day per inch mile. So it's reasonable to assume that the rest of the section is experiencing the same type of infiltration rates. To put that in perspective, the EPA considers anything over 4,000 gallons per day per inch mile to be excessive. So with these segments reading in the 20,000 gallon per day per inch mile, that's why those areas were recommended for further investigation.
Yeah, Joe, how many miles do we have of clay tile pipe in the village?
I don't have that number offhand. I can.
What's your guesstimate?
I would say the majority of it, maybe about 3 miles or so.
3 miles.
But don't quote me on that. I'd have to check.
Okay, no, I was just order of magnitude my last question is, how difficult would it be for you to mobilize and just get a couple of additional quotes? I mean, you guys know the lay of the land, so you can steer whomever to do the CCTV work.
Yep.
My concern is we only got one bid. How quickly could you get some additional bids just to satisfy our concerns with regard to that? I mean,
Sure.
Is it a week?
Yeah, I could reach out to some other sub-consultants to verify that the bids are in line, and then we can always switch sub-consultants. That's not a problem. I can start reaching out tomorrow. I can't guarantee their turnaround time, but I would say within a week or two, I should have the information. They might request site visits. Typically, they probably would, especially looking at where Pond 3 and the Tuxedo Lake lines run, which run through a lot of private residents. They're going to want to get eyes on it so they can estimate their production rates. So they know what their daily rates are, but they're going to need to know how quickly they can get through it. And that's going to predicate their quotes. So it will
No,
probably.
I highly respect the concept. I highly respect the trustees that are looking for this information. However, I really think we're barking up the wrong tree. Our professional engineer has stated clearly that the vendor that he chose is the most familiar with Tuxedo Park. And in the context that any new price, the vendor's going to want to come out, we're going to have to go on private properties again. Whether it happens in a week or not is not necessarily the case. And our professional engineer also says that based on market standards today, that the bid that he received from the current vendor is in line. Are we doing this just to create? I mean, really, is this something that we really want to do, trustees? I'm against doing it. I think it's a waste of time.
Joe, how many, if I may, Joe, when was the last time you talked to a different CCTV vendor?
I received a quote for some work down in Rockland County about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Okay, from somebody that's not who you have in mind for this work now.
Correct.
And how was their rate compared to the sub that you selected?
Their rate was consistent. The scope of work was slightly different, but their rates are consistent. I can certainly reach out to them and get a quote. And
now I'm almost completely satisfied. I just want to make sure that for last year you haven't been talking to the same CCTV vendor and saying that that's the consistent price. If you're working with other vendors and you're seeing consistent pricing, then that's what I was asking for.
And in my view, I would think that the engineer would have the best interest of the village in mind, wanting repeat business and not choosing a vendor that isn't a good price.
Well, how would we know that?
Because that's what a good business professional does.
So I just had one question.
Hey, look, you don't need to laugh. I mean, look, you can have that discussion with Joe if you want to go back and forth.
I'm trying to. You keep interrupting.
Okay. Okay, great. So, why don't you finish up and we'll decide, where to move after you and the other trustees get to discuss it.
I'm done. Trustee McHugh, I don't know what you're saying.
Sorry, I'll ask one quick question, then I'll defer to Paul and shut up finally. Who did you use when you did the Hadar property?
Aerold Construction conducted that work, but we provided our oversight.
Who did the question is, who did the CCTV work? Because you were on site when they were doing it, or a Weston and Sampson representative was on site when that work was done. I'm just curious who that vendor was.
Are you saying back in 2012 or 20?
No, more recently in I
You're talking
guess
about
it was
this past summer?
August, July or August of 2020.
It was Errol's Construction who was the contractor for that work.
Right, that's not the question. The question is, who did they sub the CCTV work to?
They self-performed.
They self-performed. So the question is, given we have work currently, we have a credit with Harold Engineering right now, why aren't we discussing doing it with them?
Because their contract was a bid contract for a specific scope of work that was approved through an engineering report through the EFC. And in order to amend their contract, the engineering report would need to be revised and accepted by the EFC, and then a change order would have to be approved by the EFC prior to them being able to do this work and pay them with the funds.
Right,
And
but there's
I was going to have Errold operate as separate entity under this contract, but I did not want to provide the illusion of any conflict of interest that if they came back indicating that the results show that the pipes are all awful, they're going to turn around and then be able to get the construction work because there's available funds in the contract, which is why I wanted to go with a third party in this instance.
right, and I'll play devil's argument. Devil's argument on that one is they're beholden to us. We've got additional work we want to do. We have additional grant money which we can apply if they do additional work. Why, given they do their own CCTV work, you've already done the flow analysis, so you can't be hoodwinked. Wouldn't it be a natural to just ask them what they quote? And then, to be honest, if you asked them and got an order of magnitude, and if it was out of sync, I'd be more than satisfied going with whomever, because it sounds like what the work Harold's done has been, from what you said, a complete success.
I could certainly reach out to Errold and have them work. Well, another reason I didn't want to have them as a subconsultant for this particular project was that we are operating on behalf of the village as the village engineer and the inspector for their current work that is ongoing. So by having them subcontracted through us for another project that could be construed as being related to their work, I did not want to cause that conflict of interest where we're trying to operate as a representative for the village on the construction side and then come into a financial agreement with them within the village on a project that could potentially go their way if the condition of these pipes are found to be in poor condition. That's why I wanted to avoid any illusion of conflict.
Right, and I guess my response to that is they're 90% complete on the other work. So the likelihood is, yeah, they'd be motivated to, given they're mobilized, done work with the village, obviously worked well with Weston and Sampson and everything, to continue that work. I would have thought that they would have a vested interest in moving it forward on a constructive way, but that's me.
And
Paul,
I would disagree
defer.
with you respectfully, and I do not want him to approach them. I do see it as a conflict, and I don't think it's worthwhile approaching them.
Yep, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, didn't we hire Weston and Sampson as our engineers? I mean, I don't want to second guess everything that Joe does. Because
It's clear he has our interests in mind, and it's clear we were wrong about the bidding.
yeah,
We were clearly wrong about the bidding.
bad judgment, and I don't see any reason to second guess everything. So
No, I'm
I'm
ready to move on with this vote.
Yeah.
You know, before we do that, before I close the debate, let's just go around the horn one more time.
First time.
Yes, Paul.
First time. So actually, thank you, Alan. That was a question that I had actually been wanting to ask, whether the people that Harold had used are the same, you know, whether they were a different firm or the same firm. And I understand Joe's reason for not wanting to approach them again, and that's fine. I just would like to say, you know, for the record and for the people listening, and you know, all the descriptions of the horrible state of the sewer system and the like, what we're really talking about here is not outflow. It's I&I, it's inflow. It's water leakage into our sewer system, not sewage leakage out of our system. Obviously, much more concerned when we have, and we don't really have instances of, you know, of outflow. This is just water leaking in, that it tends to overwhelm our sewer treatment plant. But even when it does that, the effluent levels that leave our plant are within acceptable standards. So it's just fixing things so that they get within compliance of our.
And you made this same point last meeting, so I appreciate it. There's probably new people on board. All right, so Trustee Casker, are you ready to vote on this?
I am, and Joe, I just want to thank you for hopping on the call right now. I didn't enter this meeting with any questions, and then all of a sudden a bunch popped into my mind, so I apologize for everybody else who had to listen to me ponder out loud, but I came to where I think I needed to be, and I want to thank Joe for popping on and answering my questions.
I appreciate that. Yep, I got the baby down in time, so I'm happy to answer the board's
Joe, I'm
questions.
sorry. I'm sorry, Joe.
I'm happy to answer the board's questions and resolve these now rather than having it.
Okay. Trustee McHugh, do you have any other questions?
No further questions. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, so let me go to this. Okay, resolution 0519-01. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendations made by Wesson and Sampson in their follow-up proposal letter dated May 5th, 2021, regarding sewer trunk line investigation update for conducting CCTV and root cutting services, and that the Board of Trustees approve the recommended tasks and expenses on page 2, tasks 4A, 4B, 4D, and 5, a total expense of $62,000 to be charged to item 8120.4, sanitary sewers contractual. May I have a second, please?
Good.
Any discussion?
Discussion, I see no line item 8120-4 on the budget.
Okay, I'll turn that over to Elizabeth, since we worked on that together today.
Right, so I think the mayor had said that we would create a line item for that, and so I looked.
No,
That was my understanding, I'm sorry. So I looked, I'm sorry, so I looked in New York State's, they have a chart of accounts that villages are supposed to use, and that was I picked several codes relating to sewer and talked to John about it.
Okay. All right, no problem. Alan, did you have something you prefer?
Well, we certainly can't put it there since there's no such line item.
We could certainly create one, but what would you like to put it under?
I suggest you do 8130.5, which is inflow and infiltration, which I think would be the most logical given what the discussion has been for the last 15 minutes.
Accepted. Okay, and we have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'm an A for not competitive bid.
We're not required to go out for competitive bid.
We're not required, but that doesn't mean we don't have a fiduciary responsibility.
Nor do we need to create them where they don't exist. The ayes have it. Okay, so let's move on. Now that you have us, Joe, if you're available and interested to discuss the recommendation you're making for the storm drains, do any trustees have a question that's in the budget for next year? I'd like to get that approved. But before we do that, let's just go around the horn and see what the general feeling of the trustees is. Why don't we start with you, Trustee Casker?
So I know I actually brought this up earlier today, and I never went back and checked. I don't know if Trustee McHugh, you had the budget in front of us, but I just wanted to confirm that there's a line item that we budgeted for this expense. And then if we already talked about it and it's already in there, I have no other questions. If it's not, then I think we need to discuss where this is on the priority list.
Okay.
I don't have the budget that we approved in front of me, so.
Trustee Glott?
I will in a minute.
Sure. So, Joe, if I understand this correctly, what this entails is our DPW in the first instance locating, drainage catch basins, if you will, and determining their interconnectivity, which will be on their plate, which you really need to know before you guys come out and do the GPS work. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right.
Well, that's our recommendation. Reason being is we were originally asked to help supplement the maps the village already has, the GIS maps, which is very detailed on the wastewater, sanitary sewer, and water aspects. It doesn't include drainage.
All right.
When we originally propositioned for this, it was asked to locate these structures. Our suggestion is that it is imperative to know how these structures are connected to know how the system operates. So we could go one of two routes. I thought this would be a good endeavor for the village DPW to undertake while they have availability, and I know they have a jetter truck available, and that was done in the spirit of trying to save the village some money. We could also utilize a similar subconsultant that we were just talking about for the last item, which is a CCTV company that does jetting and cleaning. However, that would be an additional expense. So that's why it was formulated the way it was.
So you guys did a fantastic job on our mapping of our sewer and water lines, and it's very helpful. And I fully expect that if we do a project like this, certainly our storm drainage will be immensely helpful in the future. My main concern in approaching it now is that it seems to me that there's a bit of a bucket of work that our DPW has to do in the first instance. And I've been around this rodeo before. I'd like to see that work get done before we take this, next step and actually say, go on this project. And I have a secondary concern, quite frankly, that it seems a bit pricey. And I'm not saying you guys aren't worth it and you're not doing a great job, and that isn't the price to do. But given the scope of other things that we have to do, and the amount of work that the DPW has to go do first, that $20,000 for a GPS location is not, in my mind, maybe the best use of our funds at this particular point in time.
These are funds for in the next budget.
Right. Well, this particular point in time, a month from now.
Right. And just in terms of your point about a work schedule, I completely agree. Yeah, this would be approving the project. It wouldn't be setting a start date for the project.
Correct. We would work very closely with Jeff Voss and his staff and John Ledwith to coordinate to make sure that their work is done ahead of time. The intent of this was to make sure that the DPW was able to get out ahead of this so that we come in on a day rate as the prior job and get as much production as possible. That's the intent. And the reason the fees are structured as they are is we just gave an arbitrary budget limit, and then we provided day rates. The issue the village has is, given the terrain and the tree cover, traditional handheld GPS units don't work very well. So we would come in with our survey grade equipment that have network extenders where they can set up an area where they can get satellites, and then they can remotely shoot these. We also have the option, if you don't need that exact level of detail in terms of location, we can manually pull swing ties to known objects and put the structures into the mapping that way. That might be sufficient for what you're trying to achieve, which is demonstrate that there's a catch basin at this street corner. You don't need the exact, down to the foot. So that is something that we can look at. But this was intended to be done over a period of time, and identifying, working with John, Jeff, and the board, identifying areas that you'd like to have mapped. And then we would go out on a daily basis with a not to exceed value of what was presented. We might only need to go out for 2 days if everything else is identified and we can get great production, and then that's all the village we build for. So that was the intent of the contract. So it's whatever the value was. I believe it was $22,000. That's the contract limit, but it would be used on an as needed basis.
Sure. So again, I'd sort of say, well, I don't understand why we wouldn't. Let's give the DPW a try and see how they go out and how successful they are at being able to determine, location and interconnectivity. Because if they can't, then we are, then we have to rethink our process and rethink what we're doing. It just seemed to me to be maybe putting the cart a little bit before the horse.
If they're not successful in locating a substantial amount of the system, we wouldn't mobilize, and we would re-engage in discussions, and we can bring out. There are consultants that do the TV work, that do the cleaning. There's also underground utility location companies that we can talk to assist the village in doing that. We didn't want to provide pricing for that work at this time, because we didn't think that it would be in the village's best interest.
But you would be supervising the DPW, correct?
Correct.
Right, so until this resolution is passed, the DPW is not going to go out on its own and find that information. I mean, we can always not pull the trigger on the project, even if we pass the resolution, both in time and execution.
If you'd be comfortable, the village can issue a written notice to proceed. So this, typically the signing of a contract is a notice to proceed, but if you want to note, you want to issue a written notice to proceed when you're comfortable to move forward, we can certainly do that as well.
That would work for me. Trustee McHugh?
I'll just go to Chris Casker's question and I guess it's to Elizabeth. I don't see a line item on the final budget 2021-22 8140-40.
I think that
So-
falls to the same category as the other one, that I was looking for codes that would work, and I looked at the New York State Chart of Accounts, and I apologize, I just did not realize that was not an option.
Okay, so that isn't an option. So I will look through this and come up with a viable option while you guys discuss it.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have, I kind of echo, sorry.
I see you, Paul. Okay, Trustee Glock.
Yeah, sure. So I recall that during our budget discussions, and I think this had originated with Jim Hayes, who may be able to pitch in and help us, but we had talked about this with a certain dollar amount in mind.
We had, and the dollar amount is $5,000.
Okay, and so we put that $5,000 someplace.
We had it in the budget without a line item marker.
Ah.
So so we had budgeted a notional amount with regard to this. Obviously, this number is 4 times the amount we had envisioned, but we don't have a line item yet that reflects that.
All right, good, Paul. Good point, Paul. Trustee Shaw? You're also muted. You're still muted.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, no, we did. We have a line item that it just said we need a line item number for it, but it was 5,000 for just stormwater GIS.
And at the time, we had yet to get a price. That's absolutely the right recollection.
Yep.
And I'd like to note, I asked for budgetary limits, and I threw in an arbitrary number, just making an assumption, so that can be modified because it's based on, like I said, a day rate, and that can be scaled back to.
All right, so what I'd like to do then is let's do that. And also with the provisions of when to start the project. And then without objection, I'll table the discussion until we receive that information.
Yeah, seems reasonable to me.
Joe, you good on that?
Can I just get some clarification as to what information you would like to
Yes,
receive?
you mentioned a moment ago that you would look more closely at the price. You were, I think you basically said it was a placeholder, the 20.
Well, I put in 20, giving adequate number of days, but I can suit it. I can tailor it to make it fit. However, within that, we would be limited by how quickly we can get production out there. So we might not be able to cover the entire village if the number is lower than
Right. Okay. No, that's perfectly fair. So what we'll do, you, John, Jeff, and I will talk, and Tinka as well, and we'll come back with something more solid for the next meeting. Joe, thank you very, very much again for spending your time. I'm glad you were able to put your child down, boy or girl.
It's a girl. She's a girl. Yeah, and she goes down very easily. So we're lucky.
Oh, good. Trustee McHugh, you have something to say?
Yeah, I just given we got Joe here and we had such a hard time getting this thing mobilized and done. Could you just kind of, given the people who are still on the call, just give a brief overview of the water control that we put in at the water plant and why we did it? I think it would be beneficial if you can just do it in a couple of minutes. That'd be great, Joe.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to it. I know, Alan, this was one of your projects that you're really pushing forward, and it was something that was necessary. So I'm glad I have the moment to speak to it. So the primary control panel that operates the water treatment plant, which is the village's drinking water, was antiquated and outdated. There were a number of computer cards that were failing, and the DPW was no longer able to get parts. I believe a few years ago they bought a stockpile in the event that they failed. So we were asked to provide some support in putting together a bid package, so vendors can be provided apples to apples bids to replace this control panel. So we worked in concert with the board to determine what control panel style you wanted, how technically advanced you wanted it, how integrated into SCADA you wanted it, things like that. We put together a bid package and we're able to get a number of bids that were comparing apples to apples as compared to reaching to different vendors, because different vendors will try to sell you different products. In the interim, there were a couple of short-term items that we identified, changing the power supply to the control panel, making sure that it was protected in an event of a power surge, and also putting a backup power system for the control panel. Both of those were installed in the short term, and they have remained for the new control panel. After going back and forth with the control panel vendor and developing the software, I'm happy to report that this week the new control panel was installed to the water treatment plant. It was no small undertaking. The water treatment plant had to be taken down out of service. We had to notify the fire departments. And then Jeff Voss did a good job of managing the water plant manually. There's a lot of pumps, there's a lot of valves, there's a lot of things that get controlled there, and he had to make sure that they were all operating in sync and properly. We were able to transition over to the new control panel, and then yesterday they ran through the final tests, ran it through all its paces, and now it's working properly. And the spare parts have been delivered, so the project has been successfully completed. And now there's a reliable control panel operating the water plant.
Congratulations to all involved. Okay, thank you very much, Joe.
Great. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Pleasure.
All right. Take care.
Okay, so thank you. We're going to move on to the Weewa Fishing Club. As I had noted earlier, I had suggested a $1,000 license fee up from $400 or $600, which was agreed to, in addition to a $500 donation for milfoil mitigation. And that was agreed to. And we also had some discussion about membership going back to the 2020 season. Some give and take was done. I copied the trustees on that. I also mentioned to Tom that, my suggestion of 1,000 was my suggestion. If you all felt it should be lower or higher, we could have that discussion this evening. My position at this point is that what's in front of us, I'm very satisfied with, and I'd like to move forward with it, but I'm going to open up the floor to Trustee McHugh and see if you have anything you'd like to add.
Sure. I guess my issues with the Weewa Fishing Club kind of highlights the issues with the Weewa Beach Club. So you look at the Weewa Fishing Club, we have currently 70 members, of which only 8 are village residents. The Weewa Beach Club has 60 non-village resident. So I really don't understand how we can have an uproar about the Weewa Beach Club and not the fishing club when you have a disproportionate amount of people in the village not being members there. And the fact that the fishing club is a year round while the Weewa Beach Club is only open for 4 months. So I'm kind of baffled by this whole thing. And I don't know if we haven't advertised it, asked for resident input with regard to this, but the issues with regard to traffic and everything are even more germane with regard to the fishing club over the beach club, as far as I'm concerned. So those are my comments. I did notice that one member who was a former police officer and lives in New Jersey is still a member, which I think is violating the bylaws of the fishing club, but that's a separate issue.
So are you serious that you don't understand all the hoopla? I mean, one is on the lake.
No. I understand the hoopla, but the
one is about who manages the village property and whether people want to invest in it or not. Now, in terms of traffic, I would like and have requested in the past that the village, the Weewa Beach Club, and the Weewa Fishing Club each share in the cost of the North Gate. I still believe that it's a mistake not to do it. And you mentioned traffic, and that's why I included them. I think we had no accidents last year, and I think this contributed to it. But that's my view. It still is my view. And obviously, I'm not going to get anywhere on that because this board has already voted down the North Gate, which I think is a mistake, but that's the way it is. All right, so Trustee Gluck, what's your view? You're muted.
I'm not going to get into a rediscussion of the Weewa Beach Club and Weewa, Fishing Club, and that. I think we spent an inordinate amount of time on those discussions over the last couple of months. I'm happy to welcome the Weewa Fishing Club as a partner, and I'm happy with the contract the way it is.
Thank you very much. Trustee Castor?
I agree with Trustee Gluck. I'm glad. I appreciate the mayor's efforts in negotiating it and getting a little bit more money for the village, and I have no other objections.
Thank you. Trustee Shaw?
I don't have an objection to them. I do agree still that it should be the North Gate, but that's, anyway.
All right, Tom, I see you're on the call. Do you want to address the one resident from New Jersey that Trustee McHugh brought up as being illegal?
Yes, I do not know of that situation. I request on an annual basis people to confirm their residency. So I don't know if you want to mention this person privately or to me separately, and I can deal with it promptly.
Yeah, I'll shoot you. I'm certainly not going to mention the name. I'll shoot you an email with the individual involved. It's a quote unquote village employee who hasn't been a village employee for years.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please do.
Yep, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Trustee McHugh. All right, so are we ready to proceed with the vote? Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approve that the mayor may sign the Weewa Fishing Club WWFC for the seasonal use of the Weewa Lake for fishing and boating. For this access, the WWFC will pay a fee of $1,000 for the license to be added as revenue in the budget line 2411 license arrangement fees, and $500 for milfoil mitigation to be added as a revenue in the water fund revenue budget line item F2770 miscellaneous revenues. May I have a second?
Second in discussion.
Yes, so you obviously would like to discuss the line items?
Actually, I don't think it can be in the water department because it's Weewa. That was my only point.
We already resolved that with the discussion we had over the budget by taking the money for lakes management and putting it all in all three lakes.
I don't think we resolved that, nor did the budget.
That's what we did.
I don't believe that's the case.
Where would you like to put it, Alan? Because we can resolve this later. Why don't you tell us where you'd like to put it? We'll pass that, and then we can always go back to that.
Yeah. Let me see where. It's going to be in the general budget. Line item 1989.40.
And the line item is called?
Lakes Management and Watershed Study.
All right, that's accepted. Any discussion? Alan seconded. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Shaw? Up or down with your thumb? Okay, that's a nay. Tinka, do you want to go on your mic again just to make sure that I get this recorded vote properly? Are you voting for or against the Weewa Beach Fishing Club?
I can't abstain, right? I have to go yes or no?
You can abstain.
Yeah, that's what I want to do, abstain.
Abstain. Okay, so we have 3 yeses. I'm a yes.
Can I-
So
can I-
4.
Can I
Four
ask-
yeses, McHugh seconded. Yes,
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Ju- Just
sorry.
so,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just because I'm curious, because is 1989.4 a revenue line or an expense line?
sorry, that is an expense line
Right.
because I was for Lakes
Mhm.
Management, you're saying it has to come in as a license fee.
We made it, well, no, we took the 500 and made it a revenue and a new line item. We picked F2770 miscellaneous revenues. We took out of the chart of accounts a brand new line item because it is a revenue. And we've never had any revenues before for lake management.
Okay, so that's fine. It just goes in the general budget and we've currently got it as unclassified.
Okay, so we have to
revenue.
change the F designation because F means water fund. So you want to change it
But-
to the general fund.
Yeah, it just needs to be
Okay.
the general fund. That's my only point. And
Okay, we'll do that.
I'm
No
abstaining.
Yep.
I
No problem.
abstained too. So it's three yays, 2 abstentions.
What are you abstaining to?
The vote, I didn't vote yes. with
Oh,
regard-
I apologize.
Sorry,
Okay,
I apologize.
so, all right, I'm sorry. So, Elizabeth, there are 3 yeses, Casker, Gluck, McFadden, and 2 abstentions, McHugh and Shaw. Congratulations, Tom. I caught a pretty big fish the other day. I'll have to show you a picture.
Thank you all for your time, and I appreciate your thoroughness.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, moving on. We're at the consent agenda. Is there any item on the consent agenda, items A through H, that any trustee would like to take out?
I had wanted to take out item F.
F is the approved budget transfers.
Resolve to approve adopted budget transfers, correct?
I missed that somehow. I know you sent
Yeah, I apologize.
a
I mean,
cryptic message. I asked you to clarify. I didn't know that you went.
yeah,
Okay, so, well, we have to take it out. We have no choice. Okay, so why don't we start with that? Actually, why don't we do the following? Why don't we pass the items that we agree can stay in, and then we'll focus on that. So let me just take a minute. That's item F. Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approve the items on the consent agenda, letters A, B, C, D, E, G, and H. G and H. Does that make sense?
yes,
Yeah, okay. May I have a second?
second.
Any discussion?
Can we have a brief discussion, just bringing the chief in with regard to,
Sure.
obviously, we've seen a lot of part-time officers leave, and I'm just wondering where your staffing levels are with regard to number of part-timers and your success in filling that void.
Dave, you're on the mic. I think some of the rationale that was sent around to the trustees is for executive session. But I think the question, Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, is how are you doing currently managing our current workload? Is that fair?
Actually, obviously, I don't want the chief to divulge anything. I was looking for more absolute numbers. He's got authorized up to 24 part-time officers. How many does he have currently? Make it easy.
Okay, well, with the hire that I have on the agenda for tonight, we will have 17 part-timers. It reduces our workforce. We were up to 20 at one time. We're down to 17 now, but there's 17 people that are working the 2-shift minimum per week that was passed by board resolution about a month ago. So the ones that we have, the current employees that we do have, the part-timers, they are working the amount of shifts that we need. So we're doing good.
And do you think you need to get any additional, or you think this is optimal operating conditions for you now?
Well, next month, I was going to put 1 additional officer on to bring us up to 18, and that will be suffice.
Okay, thank you.
And remember, we had 20. The resolution was that officers had to work 2 shifts per week. That knocked down some of our existing part-time staff, but actually paid dividends. So the lower number actually represents people that can work 2 shifts per week. So I would agree with the chief that we're in good shape. Okay, any other questions before we take our vote? Any other discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's move on. Alan, do you want to take us through the budget transfers?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm just kind of uncomfortable with them because I think from a control process, we're slipping with regard to this because, you know, we do board authorizations, we have a line item, and then if it exceeds that line item, we have to fund it somewhere else. So we have to articulate that at the time. So our employees are, you know, department heads, the chief, Jeff Voss, etc., have to manage their budget as was agreed to. So the responsibility falls on them to make sure that they're within the confines of their budget. And, you know, the problem is we sign vouchers, or our responsibility is to get a voucher and sign a voucher. We don't know if the line item, the voucher we're signing exceeds or not the line item, which is problematic. So I think we've got a control issue here where we need to far better, rather than having 20 line items that we have to move things around at the end of the year, we need to have a better control on this. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is we have some egregious movements in the water fund with regard to engineering that weren't addressed in this. I would be far more comfortable waiting on this, deferring on this, waiting till Arias comes in at year end when we are closing our books, and then doing a full sweep there and instituting better procedures then under their guidance. I just think it would be a cleaner way of doing it. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, again, you've had this information for several days at least. You certainly could have discussed that with us before the meeting, saved everyone a lot of trouble. And by the way, you haven't signed a voucher in 2 years. You've been in Florida. So it's rich coming from you about a control system on signing vouchers when you haven't signed a single voucher in 2 years.
Well, David, the issue is I monitor them. I know the finances. You want to tell me what our budget surplus is?
I'm not going to get into a tit for tat with you.
All right.
You know,
So,
no. But again, Alan, you know, do us a favor. Next time you have this information, there's no need to wait till the meeting to discuss it. We can certainly have these discussions offline. It's a much more productive thing to do. We can all work together. We could have worked with Elizabeth. I could have talked to the chief. I could have talked to Jeff about the responsibility you're making a reference to now. I could have had them come forward with information that might have been helpful to the full board, but instead here we are again at the last minute and we're grandstanding. Okay,
it's not
that's not productive. It's not productive. It's not, Alan, it's factual that if you had come forward with this concern before, I could have met with all the interested parties. Is that correct?
You could have met.
I could have met with them and we could have resolved these issues. All right, let's move on. All right, so we'll table that till the next discussion.
Next meeting. Are you saying?
We'll table it. I'll let you know when. Okay, so that is it for this evening's show. We're going to now move to executive session. I have a feeling it's going to be quite a long session. I'm warning folks that if you want to stay around, it's going to be at least an hour and a half, I'm sure. Before I go into executive session, is there anything else that any of the trustees would like to comment on?
Nothing for me.
Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees temporarily leave the public meeting to enter into executive session at 8:41 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the DPW bargaining agreement, legal matters, water department settlements, and the employment of a particular village employee. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, John, would you take us into the breakout room, please?
Okay.
So that means observers sign off, correct?
No, you don't have to. You can stay on if you wish.
Executive sessions are open to everyone?
No, we're going into a separate breakout room, so this Zoom will stay active. So anybody that's on can stay on if they wish to wait till the board returns. The board will be removed to a separate Zoom room that won't be visible to the public.
Do we need the chief for any portion of this?
My guess is yes, with regard to one, don't we?
So you want to move that up front?
Yeah. Don't you think that'd be prudent? Then he can,
Makes sense to me.
All right, I included him in the breakout room. Just bear with me. I'm trying to capture everybody at once.
John knows what we're doing even before we do it.
Well, I don't see Tinka Shaw in the listing. If she is still on, yes.
I'm here.
Yep. I,
You have no idea how long it's going to take.
where is she?
Mayor, you're muted.
Has he
Thank
come?
you. Welcome back, everyone. We have completed our executive session, and we have two resolutions that we're going to move forward. One is regarding the chief of police and an increase in his annual salary for the period of January through June. January 1st through June 5th,
You're on
2021.
mute, Alan.
Mayor, I apologize for correcting, January 1st through May 31st.
May 31st, thank you. January 1st through May 31st. And so I would like to be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approve the revised agreement with Chief Conklin in the form annexed here to providing additional compensation for the period from January 1st, 2025 to May 31st, 2021. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. And we also have a second one regarding Sergeant Michael Tabak defense indemnification. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees provide Sergeant Michael Tabak indemnification. So listen carefully. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 No, you're not in favor.
Oh. I know what you mean.
Listen
Say it
carefully.
again. Say the resolve. Yeah, say the be resolved.
Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees provide indemnification, defense and indemnification for Sergeant Michael Tabak. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
No.
Any nays?
Mayor, yeah, let's just be clear. The resolution should be to deny defense and indemnification to Sergeant Tabak. That's
Okay,
the
all right,
resolution.
no problem.
Sorry.
Let me do that. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees deny Sergeant Michael Tabak defense and indemnification. May I have a second?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, Brian. All right. So yes, I admit I'm getting a little giddy. All right. Now, is there any other business that anyone would like to discuss? Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees adjourn the public meeting at 10:19. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Everyone seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye,
Appreciate it.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Two.